Good evening. You are listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. I have with me tonight from the Great Midwest, RDV, and of course, the young 20-something Professor Pixel, also from Central Florida. And we're going back a ways to the late 70s, early 80s with a magazine called Heavy Metal and a movie that was just a mainstay back in the old Cosmic Concerts, midnight screening type things up there with, I don't know, Rocky Horror Picture Show and a bunch of other stuff there too. And guys, this is a movie I haven't seen in a really long time. There's several things I remembered about it. Overall, I think it's a very good movie. It's got some rotoscoping animated stuff in here, not all of it complete, and it's an anthology story. And I realized that the was it Love, Death, and Robots recently. I'd started watching Netflix, so I guess is the spiritual successor to it because there was a sequel, I think called Heavy Metal 2000. But for me, all that has to start from this movie Heavy Metal, which has a great soundtrack. We could argue about how good or how bad the effects are and how not special they are, but I gotta tell you, this thing moves briskly. If you don't like one story, there's another one here that you probably like, and I think, of course, its magnum opus is the fifth story there too, with the mute Valkyrie warrior here too. But very juvenile tale, a lot of skin in this. Who really cares? But yeah, there's something to be said about fantasy that we were talking about in the 70s, turning into the 80s with Conan, with Flash Gordon. Just with all sorts of things that were on the big screen and being successful. And this has to be one of them too, because this is a very likable movie. It's a cult film as well. And I just got to say, I'm glad we covered it, but I want to start off with you first, Pixel, being the young person here, because I'm going to guess that for you, this is a first watch. Am I right?
Yeah, so it was a first watch. Are you sure you want me to go first?
I just want your initial impressions, talk about some of the key things you want to talk about, and then we'll go to RDV, because I know he'll have something to say.
I it's good to open that beer. I did not think this was a good movie. I did not at all. The soundtrack, yes, there's a lot of good songs on it. Yeah, sure. But the best one was what was it by Journey? Crap.
Open Arms.
The Open Arms by Journey. That was the best part, but it was so quiet in the background. That's the one song that I really just, oh man, I love that one. I put it on right after the movie to go ahead and help cleanse myself, because this movie is, yeah, there's a lot of skin, but it's all just so bleh. And how it's presented, I really don't feel that there's a lot of the artist deserves some credits. At the same time, half of this looks like those crappy comic sex mags. You know, the ones with a bunch of
I want to ask,
and it's just not. It just doesn't look good. It doesn't look natural. But like when we talked about Fire and Ice. Yes, the clothing was ridiculous, but when they moved, it looked like, compared to the footage, what it was supposed to be.
If you listen carefully, John Candy's in here a lot, and there's definitely a Canadian crossover here as well. And one of the things too that I want to bring up as we circumnavigate this conference over to RDV's initial take is that you know, in the 70s, nobody really cared about skin in movies or breasts being shown. And everybody's kind of all touchy about, you know, even side boob now, which is the end thing. That's kind of ridiculous. So I'm certainly not offended by it. And I know a lot of people might think it's juvenile, but that's kind of the point. It is fantasy, and that's really got to have a skin content to it. And other than, was it Fritz the Cat and a few other things, there wasn't a lot of hardcore animated stuff that we've seen, unlike now, you know, which is more prevalent. But RDV, I know you got some strong opinions about it. I'm curious as to why he thinks it's a bad movie. We'll dive into that. What'd you take on this?
Well, I'm gonna say lean on doubt as far as Pixel never heard of Heavy Metal Magazine.
Yep.
Because
most people probably haven't if they're younger and listen to this channel.
Yeah, Heavy Metal Magazine was basically a place where you could write the stories that the Comic Code Authority wouldn't let you touch. So that's why you're going to see a lot of vulgar stuff in this. And also, this is the first time you've actually seen an American animated, you know, as far as movie that was actually allowed to be just what it was, heavy metal. That's why you have Sammy Hagar at the main theme. You have Blue Oyster Cult. You put in Don Felder. You have Nazareth, man. You had Black Sabbath. You know, you had all these awesome bands at the time, from the 70s and the early 80s. Dude, Kevin Eastman, guy who created the Turtles, bought the publisher rights to Heavy Metal Magazine in 1992. And basically, yeah, he said this was a big hit when it came out. It still continued to be a big thing for animation, because up at this point, you weren't really allowed to do certain things. You're looked down upon. Oh, it's just vulgar. It's porn. Oh, it's like, because everybody had to be like a certain thing. You had to be the PG if you did anything. That's why you saw like Gotcha Man and stuff like that, you know, over in Japan. So this was we had a lot of talent on here. The soundtrack was awesome. Harry Canyon story here.
That's as bad as Mike Hunt as far as names go.
Yeah, that inspired Fifth Element.
Yeah,
That's
you
see
Fifth Element when you see this, don't you?
Yeah, it's scene by scene of the taxi stand with a girl. It's literally, and man, like I said, these are you may not like every story in here, and that's guaranteed. I don't like every story in here too. I go for the one, the Harry Canyon. I go for Tarna. I said this, and like I said, this is basically the format that you got with a lot of magazines, Creepy or Eerie, or even
Creepshow the movie.
Yeah, Creepshow. Yeah, you got several living tales, but the thing is they were all connected, which was really rare to see in a for most things. Born Magazine was basically kind of vulgar too. Eerie was the one that was really, or EC horror or EC. That's the one that had a lot of gore or violence, adult situations. So when teenagers saw this coming out, it blew their mind, because, man, you'd never seen anything like this in 1981. 2 years later, you get Fire and Ice, and people were kind of underwhelmed because, like, well, they already saw this, like, you know, and then they saw Conan. I said, I understand you like Fire and Ice. You don't like this. That's your prerogative, but that wasn't the thing, though. And I agree. There's a lot of people probably in chat who probably disagree with you and saying that this is a good movie.
Well, you guys both touched on something I thought was really interesting, and so I want to touch on that before we get into some of the stories, as people are starting to file in here for our review of Heavy Metal from 1981. Now, you guys obviously on our other related channels, the stuff that you guys focus on a bit, you handle more of the Marvel, DCU, and comic book stuff. I know you guys are knee deep in that, and I'm not as familiar with it as you guys are. But I think your point, RDV, about the fact that the standards that were allowed were not necessarily mainstream, would find them way into adult things too. And for some people, humor would be Mad Magazine, National Lampoon had a lot of different type of publications, more of your northeastern liberal type of humor that worked its way around in the country, and they were super popular. Obviously, National Lampoon helped produce things with Chevy Chase in it, and again, SCTV, Second City Television, which is a knockoff of the Second City of Chicago stuff. That's where Harold Ramis, who's got a voice in one of these, John Candy, bunch of people that you would know from like Schitt's Creek and all that. The standards, I guess, in comics, you would have to say were very low in terms of, you know, you don't really have too much gore, sex, or violence or whatever, and anything like that you'd have to find elsewhere. So I don't know if things have changed now, but is that one of the reasons why you know, Pixel, you think this isn't that good of a film? It's just because it's so blatantly juvenile?
Well, maybe that could definitely be one of the things. And I think that the stories, just while they have elements that I'm able to enjoy, like some of the bits of the which one is it? The one with the robot decides, oh, I'm going to hook up with the Earth Girl. Yeah, God. But there was a line or two in there that was chuckle-worthy. But most of it was all just okay. I don't care. None of this made me care. The last story is really supposed to be the coup de grace of it. It's supposed to be the victory where you have the beautiful mute warrior. And yeah, no, I get that. Okay. But at that point, I've been thrown around, tossed around like a common whore in one of these stories. to the point that why should it matter? None of this was really appealing. What was the most appealing, honestly, was in the B-17 story, where you had the soldiers who were dead reanimating as these.
That is cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. That one was cool because of that. But the rest of it, I'm just.
Pixel hates cheesecake. He'd rather look at undead people. You get it.
Well, here's the thing. If you want to go ahead and get into the nitty gritty of it, when you have movies like Fire and Ice, something like that, where they are alluding, like it's barely there, that's far more exciting than just showing. That's far more titillating.
Thank you, Maranya.
Well, so basically, you know, there's a story of the sum of all evils, this little green glowing object that makes its way around, connects all these stories, and so we get basically this kind of detective, you know, on Earth shithole, New York City, where
I hated it.
Well, it's a shithole, right?
What city did you say it was?
I said New York. Was I right? Am I wrong?
New York City. Sorry, we do that on our channel.
New York City.
Harry
Yeah.
Canyon.
That's right. I have that old salsa commercial. And we see that some guys are trying to mess with him. And he understands what I thought was interesting about his character, the taxi cab driver, is he understood his place. He didn't want too much. He didn't want too little. When he had a little bit of faith at the end where he wandered around for the girl that pulled a double cross and all that. And he whacked her. It's like, and this is kind of it's a simple line that sounds really horrible. But again, Moranya's right about there's some great lines in here. You guys said it too. But it's like, dumb broad, kind of cute. I almost felt sorry for her. just got a little greedy, you know. But the point is like he was like the most mature one, because what we see here are very juvenile representations of certain things that get people in trouble. And of course, it's almost like the monkey's paw, where if you wish something, it's going to come true, but not the way you mentioned it. And so you get some of that in these stories. We get the bribery one, where the janitor / geek guy ends up turning into like an Incredible Hulk, whatever, goes on a rampage. You know, it seems like only lasts 2 or 3 minutes until the hero guy pays him off. And as an adult watching that, I'm like, oh, that's a lot better than when I was younger. But yeah, I do like the feeling of how quickly it changes, because before a story can almost get boring, it changes, right? And so to me, obviously, I think we'll talk here for a moment or two about some of the scenes and lines we like, and we'll talk about the last sequence, which I'm almost just assuming universally is considered the best one out of the three of us.
Did you see the cast in here other than John Candy? You have Joel Flaherty's in here too.
Yes.
Victor Romanas.
Yes.
Oh my God! It's just like I'm just going through it. It's like there's Eugene Levy is not a big name. Well, Pixel, unless he's watched American Pie, that might be too dull for him. Like I said, it was Len Blum. If you don't know who that name is, Pixel, you probably never watched Stripes or Meatballs or The Big Panther.
A lot of those Canadian-based too.
Yeah.
Bill Murray.
Yep. So yeah, this guy was right for that, and this is also produced by Ivan Reitman too. The guy he created.
Oh, wait a minute. What did he do, guys?
Ghostbusters.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Are you asking, or do you like?
No, I'm being sarcastic on that because
well, I never know, because I deal with E all the time, so I never know what he remembers.
Ooh.
Yeah.
No, but here's the thing. Okay, so you got all these stories. Like I say, it's anthology. We can say that the animation's maybe not the greatest in the world, but is it effective at what it's doing? I think so. Animation, if you look back on it, wasn't necessarily clean and sharp unless you saw like a hardcore Disney film that a lot of times was, hand painted in cells, and of course things would change. And we're talking, early 80s here. So is the animation, it may not be the type of style that you like, but I thought it was appropriate for what it is. It's supposed to be a little grungy feeling to me.
Like, yeah, it was crude as far as the art. It's not. It's still, they're still learning the animation, but they're also doing rotoscoping.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what we talk about in Fire and Ice, about how, or even Lord of the Rings, when you film somebody's actions and then you animate it too, how it gives it almost like a human look, but kind of choppy. Here, you could even argue that maybe it wasn't as fluid because maybe it's not as many frames per second or whatever, not to get too nerdy on it or whatever, but I can see that a little bit. But again, for what it's doing, it's so simplistic that I don't think it really ruins what it's trying to do. This is, again, not a family film. This is not something you sit down and with everybody watch and talk about the moral of this and that. It's adult stuff with lots of gore, really bad fighting, blood, TNA, sex, and all that. They're just quick, short stories. They're almost like pulp magazines, from back in the 40s, right?
They, like I said, this is the first movie they did an anthology, those different stories with an opening and an ending, kind of like its own separate story, tying it all together. And then you go to the sequel, which came out in the middle 2000, was this focus on the last character, the one that Pixel didn't like. So Tarna. So they went away from actually just doing multiple stories to focusing on one stories.
That's not fair. I didn't like any of the characters.
You didn't like Gar.
Pixel,
what must I do?
Pixel, you sound like those church people who didn't like the movie Bones. The Bone Collector.
Oh, okay. And,
it's filth. It shouldn't be made.
I didn't say it shouldn't be made. I said I didn't like it. I didn't think it was good. Yeah, you're right. It captures.
No.
Wait. It captures the feeling of a pulp magazine because that is basically what it is. I've never enjoyed reading those ever. So
really,
yeah. So having a movie like this is nothing for me.
No, but to go piggyback, you said you didn't like it because it was juvenile.
No, I said that might be one of the reasons because I feel like, there's the fourth woman with her tits out. Okay, that's all right. I don't care.
He's like, my mom's gonna watch this. Oh crap!
No, I watched it on my own.
Do you watch it in family? Like you
no. I do for some things, but no.
This is Pixel time. Oh god, there's too much boobs. I need Carl Manvers.
Well, let me go back to what we were saying at the beginning to kind of put a little more perspective on it too. Obviously, standards, I think, culturally speaking, are a lot lower now than what they used to be. However, it seems like there's this very limited ability out there to put a lot of things on display, despite how quickly we have social media and everything else there too. And what I'm saying here is that you're not going to see a movie like this today, whether it's animated or not. You're not going to see a movie like Conan which is like, to me, the adult version of this in a sense, with nudity and everything else there too. It's appropriate for what's going on here. We got Dar, the adolescent nerd that turns into a big stud or whatever, that has to pound his ladies all the way through and save them. And he's kind of like a good guy in a sense too, because they write off and he's like, no, I don't want to be a ruler or a king. So you're seeing the pluses and minuses of that if you want to argue in the morals. But the one thing I want to ask you two guys here, and again, Pixel, this is probably more for you because of the way you guys cover other stuff with comics and all that. But I don't believe that the writing in comics has gotten any better. And maybe that's blasphemous of me saying it. Maybe the artwork has over the years, in the past 40 years. So, well, I'm simply saying that, comics were in, just like with TV and with magazines, were written for a certain, acceptance level of comprehension, and that's not a knock, that's the reality of it. But I don't think all of a sudden the writing's gotten better. And so to me, I look at it and I go, okay, yeah, this is juvenile and everything, but it was the only area where this adult type themes could be caught. And so am I wrong about that? Is that just, do things not like this exist today or what?
I mean, if you look at like a quarter of the books on Indiegogo, most of the indies are supposed to be this,
right?
But no, mainstream, no, it's not. I'm not trying to knock pulp magazines. I'm saying they're not for me. But I would say that there is a stark difference between the writing in a pulp magazine and something in a comic. I want to talk about Din. That's the name of the story. Din, because there's elements of that which has a very similar theme to Gore. This kind of wimpy, nerdy guy gets transported into a world where women are constantly throwing themselves at him, and he's having to face this great evil. But inside you have, oh boy, that sounds fair to me. But it's just, I think that this, while it's just a bad representation of the same idea. Gore, while I had problems with its execution, it took that story and did far better with that concept than this did.
Gore didn't have somebody with a mouthful of boobs, though.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I'm messing with
Of
you.
course. But see, that's the thing. This is not just juvenile and oh look, there are titties. No, it's juvenile and it's writing. It's kind of pathetic in its writing, I feel. And there are plenty of comic books that I could give you, Rob, that are not pathetic in the way that most of these stories are.
Okay, I mean, fair enough. I don't know that, so I'll defer to your guys' judgment on it. I just go, well, this is where the adults, have to go get their stories and all that too. So I think a part of it is when standards start to relax a little bit, like whether it was an X-rated designation, you would have obviously a lot of experimentation on what people would want to do, not necessarily because it's good, but because they've been held back. They're going to try different things out. And I look at some of this adult animation like it, because obviously later on we would get adult animated stuff late at night on Cartoon Network and everything, not just Beavis and Butthead, but a bunch of other things too, and those appear to still be very popular. Even now there's a series on Netflix about something that sounds interesting, but after watching an episode or two, I go, it's not as good as what I would have hoped. And it's Elvis Presley working as like a CIA assassin while he's married and all that too, and it's got Matthew McConaughey in it and Don Cheadle, I think, and some others, and it's like this. It's gory, it's graphic, it's slick, but I look at it and go, it's just kind of trying to pop itself rather than tell a story. Whereas I think here in heavy metal, again, this is a movie to experience. It's not one to analyze per se. You just get a good vibe when you're watching it, and it changes quick enough. Or if you don't like one story, you go to the other. So let's kind of move this on towards the end a little bit. We talked a little bit about Dar, the goofy one, which I thought was funny. The plain one, Pixel, that's the only one you seem like you kind of liked a little bit. Tell me why.
I think that, well, apart from it also being, war, which is always fun, especially in comics. There's some great wartime comics. I feel like with the horror angle, it really felt it properly used what it was, the tools. See, in the first story, when you disintegrate the people in the backseat, okay, all right, comedic effect, all right, good. When people die in the second land and they're all bruised up, you have the nerd telling you, oh boy, look at the bazoongas on that one. And
if you watch Robot Chicken, it's the exact same humor.
I think Robot Chicken, while yes, but Robot Chicken follows that same kind of concept. So does Mad Magazine.
Yeah.
But again, that's never been what I look for, because that's not decent storytelling.
I'm sorry that you don't like it, but a lot of people do like it, though.
I never said they couldn't.
I didn't say they couldn't either. I'm just saying. I'm sorry.
You're saying that I can't not like it.
Well, it sounds like
humor
you just
storytelling.
don't like...
I look as being a little bit different. I mean, honestly, so if the humor is what mostly everything's based on, then who really gives a shit about the story? And adult comedies, whether it's Dumb and Dumber or Cable Guy, I mean, the story is pretty fucking lame, right? We're there for just to have scenes set up for it. So that's the view I'm choosing to approach this with.
Yeah, this had a budget of $9.3 million, came back with $20.1 million for the box office. Like I said, these movies were meant for basically aimed towards guys. They weren't aimed towards women. Just like comic books were kind of like, you got more of the sleazy ones. Vampirella, the great comics were aimed for more adult audience. Now I can understand, Pixel, you seem more like a guy who doesn't want to see tits on the screen. So I respect your opinion. If you just would rather just take it kids.
Okay, you can look at it like that. You can look at it like
I understand what you're saying. It's not, if it's not germane to the story, why have it? I get it. But that's, you're looking at from the story.
Next he's gonna tease me for reading Xenoscopes.
No, I've read some Xenoscopes. They have writers that are actually writing, tales. They try to make characters enjoyable. I feel like you're right, Rob. Maybe it is a movie to experience, just like Avatar. But I'm still going to say that Avatar is hot garbage despite the stunning effects.
I would agree with that assessment, by the way, too. But seeing as how the last story in here is the one everyone always talks about, it seems to be a little bit longer there with Tarna or whatever like that. I mean, obviously, though, that's what the movie's based off. It's got a nice poster and everything too. And one of the things I think when people think about this movie is they may not remember all these things that we've just talked about, but they always remember the really badass chick, warrior, Valkyrie type,
in the Grand
glamazon,
Canyon. Yeah.
yeah, riding this fantastical beast or whatever. And I just, it's a nice little image. I'm trying to think in fantasy what matches up with it. Right now, I get mostly male heroes of some type or whatever,
Cena
but
or Red Sonja.
Red Sonja is an older one, so that
Yeah.
may be
She's
accurate.
still current right now. Right now, Vampirella, Red Sonja. There you go.
Yeah, but I mean, this last one I thought was actually, like you said, that this is what they based I think was it Heavy Metal 2000 or whatever the sequel was called, Heavy Metal 2. Obviously, this one didn't really talk as much. There's not a lot of stupid stuff in here other than, hey, I want this, I want that. And all I kept thinking about watching this last particular scene here was, I would love if somebody had gotten their hands on this, and I'm going to throw a name out there or two. A Panos Cosmatos, who's done Beyond the Black Rainbow, and he did one of the anthology stories and something I can't remember, the Cabinet of Curiosities. He did Mandy, of course, with Nick Cage. And I thought, man, I could totally see somebody like him that has this trippy kind of thing that it's not a movie that you care about the story. You care about the feeling you have while you're watching it and the vibe that you get experiencing it. This, I thought, holy shit, this, a lot of these could be done like the fighter pilot one, I think could just be a good horror one on its own. And the other one could be a good detective one. So they do have different ones in here. I agree with all that. And some are definitely more juvenile than others. But this last one, I think in the hands of a director like that, I think you could really do almost a full length thing on this or something because it just feels different than the rest. And Pixel, you had mentioned that before. I mean, what's your take on this last story here with her?
I think that this last story, you're right. It's specifically because the main character is mute. You have Lochnar, who has these threatening pieces of dialogue, and that's the best voice actor in this. I know that a lot of these names are great, but they felt like most of the time that they were just reading off of the script, and then they called it a day. First shot. Okay, we read that within 15 minutes. Let's go have a break. It didn't feel like acting, but the main voice actor for Lochnar, Percy Rodriguez, uncredited. Who would uncredit the best one? But he had power behind his delivery. Yep. And so when you have that and you have this warrior facing great visualizations as she's going to face the greatest evil. And that tying into, at the end, the poor girl that sadly looks like my profile picture for most of the movie, because she dies, but the girl, after Lochnar is defeated then and suddenly in the present, she goes ahead, goes outside, finds a fantastical creature, and she is the next of, what are they called? Terrakian? Terrakian. She is the next Terrakian. And yes, it's far more interesting. That is far more interesting than anything else we saw in this movie.
Oh, I would agree with that. Absolutely. And I think this rotoscope part of her walking around, I try to remember, and off the top of my head, I keep thinking of like this one actress who died a few years back named Julie Strain, who was like 6'1", a legit glamazon. Yeah. She was known for the magazine, of course, too, a little bit. But
that was Eastman's girlfriend.
Yeah. A woman that didn't have a problem playing this kind of role and embraced it, which I think was a good thing. I think this warrior princess one, obviously, to me, Pixel, we talked about how there's a lot of what we'd call gratuitous nudity in there. That's for the guys. This one here, they're not afraid to show her body and how attractive it is or elegant, the sexuality. They definitely don't hide anything as she's getting dressed. One thing I think is cool too, and I don't know if it matters, is she's got sleek white hair. So I go, oh, is she supposed to be this older woman? I don't know. Maybe it's just something with the race, but it's a good look rather than being blonde or brunette or a redhead or whatever. And I don't know why, but it sticks out. And of course, the high heels and the leather outfit and everything that's very skimpy. The point is when she's walking, she looks like she's somebody that could actually handle that sword. Like RDV when we talk about Conan. We talked about how the lady who played in there with Conan, how she was like an actual dancer and choreographer, and she looks the role. She moves and glides in those scenes. I got that same feeling from this actress in here too. So again, we get a bar scene, we get detective work, we get a sense of history of what's going on, the good side, bad side, something with powerful force on the outside. It was kind of cool, the idea of the liquid hot magma coming out and taking over everybody and then turning them into these evil creatures, because that was the Lochnar going in there who was changing size. But you almost felt like she wasn't going to win. They did a good job of selling that too, and even with the creature getting kind of attacked or whatever like that, this was good. This was I think Head and Shoulders the best story of all of them.
It's crazy. It's crazy that the sequel, Heavy Metal 2000, gets a lower rating on IMDb, but it had the best voice acting with Michael Ironside as the crazy lunatic, power hungry villain, and it's and it basically was Tarna. But they didn't call her. We call her Julie in this one, and she basically was the same thing. She had the sword, and was going to slay Michael Ironside
because she's dead. At the end of this story, she's
I know, but I'm just saying it was the same type of warrior. They just basically redid it.
Yeah,
they used based off Julie Strain with the rotoscoping, and yes, there's more adult scenes in there.
That's fine. That's fine. See, the problem isn't adult scenes; it's just how you use them. And when you just throw it around, okay, that's fine. There's no redeeming value. I felt like I wasted most of the time I had before coming to review it. Because I watched it.
We're gonna watch the Axel Braun version of Avengers and see how much time you wasted.
Well, the thing is Pixel, your concerns about why it's not effective. That's what split this into two camps, because mainstream wise, certain people that felt like, and this isn't somebody smarter than somebody else when I say this, it's the people that got what it was trying to do were like, oh yeah, this works, this makes sense. Just like I might not get what the MCU is trying to do, or DC with their movies or Star Wars, because when I look at them I go, this is rubbish. It doesn't, to your point, it doesn't make me care about them no matter what. And I don't know the history and backstory, so it doesn't mean anything. So I get it, and I understand that too. And I would say RDV that when Heavy Metal 2000 came out, a big thing about that is people were excited of the idea of, God, I remember this really cool trippy thing called heavy metal from the early 80s coming out. And I think it's like when we talk about with the Creed movies, right? For better or for worse, Creed 3 is probably the best of the three because it's its own movie, not because it's a good movie or Rocky's not in or whatever you want to say. And I thought long and hard about how to describe it, because that's how people approach Heavy Metal 2000. It doesn't matter how good it might have been with the voice acting and all that, it wasn't the same kind of feeling or tone or experience that this one was. And so while I thought it was okay too, some people like it more. It just was different. And I think that's just one of those things where at the time, these super sequels like this, it's not like commonplace now where everything gets like 10 sequels. It just was kind of let some people down about it, because again, when you do watch this as an adult, I think you do feel a little bit different about it than if you did when you were like 12 when you watched it and it's been a long time. Because some of you go, oh yeah, when I look at through the eyes of a 12 or 14-year-old or whatever, a young teenager, you do look at it differently than as an adult. I can say that. So I see both sides on it. But that being said, I still think it's an enjoyable film. It's definitely worth watching if you haven't seen it.
And this is my second time watching. I watched it back when I was Pixel age. And I thought it was okay.
24?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. 22, 24, right around there. Yeah, because I came across it back on when they actually had the VHS tapes, Remember those? Yeah. Anime on VHS. I was like, what the hell is this? So I watched it and I was like, is it like, I probably was like you. I liked 2 out of the 3, and that's kind of how I am still today. I love the Taxi with Harry Canyon. And then I like this one, Tarna. Those are my 2 out of the whole entire thing. Sure, there's some vulgar stuff in there, but like I said, it's like it's not for me, and I agree that's not for you either. But I will not write up the whole entire movie saying it's bad.
I see, but I'm not saying it's because of that period. It's that on top of these stories being kind of half-baked and not as funny as they thought they were being. Or as
they were half-baked, sir. That's the whole point.
Yeah, that's true. No, they were half-baked, absolutely.
And that's why I politely disagree with you. I thought they were actually written well.
Well, Tarna is written well, and that's not a joke about the lack of dialogue because of the fact that the main character is mute through most of it. No, I think that Tarna, with you have the religious leaders calling upon, oh, we need what's left of the Tarakians, and going ahead and having that, the violence in that, it's brutal, but that's good. All that is good. And you know what? That sounds like the sequel sounds very interesting because it focuses on the Tarakians, or whatever Tarakian is there, the warrior, the female warrior. That sounds far more interesting than this movie ended up being.
Yeah, obviously the end, of course, ties things up with the young girl getting, run out of the house, and that was actually, I think, an explosion that they had to film, and the fantastical dinosaur, whatever you want to call it, the pet that's out there waiting for. So we understand that this is like just, the force of evil. Now you've got a good female fighting force against it, and everything else is juvenile fantasy in between. But I don't know. I still think it's pretty good. And when I think of animation and I think of films, it's incredible what you can do now. Like, say, a few years ago, the Peanuts movie that was actually, I thought, done well, although it looks different because I'm used to the old watercoloring looking ones with the jazzy scores, and all the Pixar stuff coming out that's just incredible. But again, it does come out of, I think, story at times too, and one is a tool to help the other. But that's the thing with fantasy. We know it's not real, so where do we check our brain at the door, and how much do we analyze it? And I do think that there's some hit and misses with these stories, and it's tough. Fantasy, to me, did kind of die out after the early to mid 80s, and we don't see much of it now. And you could argue too that comic book movies being made today, like, even if they adultify it, like I like The Punisher because the level of violence in it and how effective it was with it is very brutal. But that's one of the rare things that I like, despite what you all may describe when you review these things on your channels about good writing, because it's hard for me, like if The Boys is on, even though they throw a lot of money at it, it looks like a big budget thing. I just, people walking around in superhero costumes, adults in business office. I can't disassociate that. And maybe it's easier if you're younger. I don't know, but it's kind of like the reverse thing of what Pixel was saying about, the letting the fantasy go and just enjoying it.
To me, The Boys is pretty much what it'd be like if people really had superpowers. That's basically The Boys. It was what, the vulgarity stuff. But I want to get back to what Dave was saying. He says Pixel doesn't like things that are cool. And Carlito doesn't like you. He's spitting in your face. Also, he said it's a heavy metal concert. And that's pretty much what he described this. And Morania says it best. The movie is literally an animated version of an issue of the magazine.
Yeah. So
the stories were from different issues. The movie succeeded in what it was intended to do. So if you're not a fan of the magazine, you probably weren't going to like this. But it's a Pixel. I respect that you don't like it, but I will disagree on you saying that it's an awful movie.
I don't think it's good. I'm sorry. I wish I did.
Apologize. You don't have to. No.
Yeah, take it back. Screw you.
I'm not going to take it back.
Well, this reminds me of, like I said, and I mentioned earlier, and I'll start closing up with this, is that when Creepshow came out, I think a year later, as a kid, I'm like, I know it's fake, I know it's crap, but if you're reading like Tomb of Dracula or Tales from the Crypt or any of those kinds of spooky things, unless you're watching like Hammer horror films that the British did really, really well, I mean, American stuff is pretty boring and tame by comparison, especially the Universal stuff, even though I like it, right? So to me, when Creepshow came out, the fact that it was Stephen King and you had a similar type of anthology thing piecing it together, I thought it was fantastic, and the lights and all that. And I watched it today. I still obviously I'm not scared by it, but some of those practical effects look great. And of course, you get the Demon Knight later on and stuff, and it'd be more campy than the other way around. And it was interesting to see the pages flip in the wind as it was going from story to story and all that. That was all fairly new attempts back then in the early 80s to take something like from a pulp magazine or a comic book or graphic novel and make it into a mainstream movie. That was still relatively new. About the only thing that wasn't was you know, the whole 70s movement of getting violence and gore and sex on film in mainstream movies, and, you know, the whole slasher thing taken off in horror. You know, when you get an audience that gets desensitized to that stuff, you have to do more and more of it. I'll say John Wick 4, which
So,
I will withhold comment on right now because I just saw that today, and that might be something we'll be talking
yeah.
about soon here on the Extreme Movie Show. But
Uh,
guys, I'll just finish up with this. Um, it may not be a movie for you. I think Pixel sums up pretty well, and I understand those thoughts, and a lot of people echo that. Uh, unless you're into this sort of thing, which I think most people who listen to this channel are, you know, you're still going to like it. So check it out if you haven't. Um, I enjoyed it. I think it's worth seeing. If you're into animated films at all, it's definitely those ones I think that you should see on your list, because it has, like, you know, again, the point that RDV mentioned about Miranya's statement about it succeeding what it was trying to do. That was relatively new, so there
It's
is
early
definitely
animation.
some significance with it. Yep, and rotoscoping's in it as well, so we've talked about that a little bit. Definitely some interesting times in the animated films back then. Final thoughts, guys?
Since he didn't like this movie, let's make him watch another one similar to it. It's called Space Hunter: Adventures in the Forbidden Zone. Molly Ringwald.
Wait, I thought we were going to do Battle Beyond the Stars.
Doesn't matter what we do next week, I won't be here.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. We'll find you. We'll make you watch bad.
Final thoughts, Pixel?
I wish I had enjoyed it. But ultimately, it's just not for me, because it is literally just a pulp magazine thrown onto the screen. So if you like that, this movie is made for you.
You know, one of our most popular videos too is Body Double, which is, you know, an erotic kind of thriller, and this movie obviously isn't that, but it's got some of that cheesy pulp stuff to it, and I admit I like that kind of stuff. So RDV, I want to put you on a spot here, which I don't normally do, because you know, Pixel's not going to be here next week, so it's going to be you and I. I was thinking Tuesday we either do John Wick 4, the most recent one, or we do Thief with James Caan, and whichever one of those two we don't do, maybe we do that
I would say
next
John
Sunday,
Wick.
depending on what you want.
John Wick 4 for this.
I wish we had done John Wick 4 today, because I saw John Wick 4.
Well, that way I can rip it apart. I'll be the bad guy. But go ahead, RDV.
I was just saying we could see it on Tuesday.
John Wick for Tuesday?
Tuesday, because I already watched it. Yeah, yesterday. So.
Okay. Thief, James Caan, I'd like to do next Sunday. If that's something we end up doing something else next Sunday, that's fine. That's just a fantastic movie. It's better than Heat. It's better than Collateral, in my opinion. It's probably James Caan's best performance, but probably his second best movie. Brian's Song is up there as well. It's probably his best from the early 70s, mid 70s, whatever. Both are fantastic. I watched that today as well. I was like, fuck, what a good movie. That's something we got to talk about. Yeah, John Wick 4. I actually have some very positive things to say about it, and of course, I'll point out the things that I don't like, so I get to play a little bit of Pixel.
Yes,
with
and
John
then
Wick
when we
4.
get to June Pride Month, we'll talk about The Boogeyman, Stephen King's short story.
Nice, yes. And then pretty soon we've got the Exorcist movie coming out with the greatest actor of all time.
You mean the James Woods reboot of vampires?
The Pope's Exorcist. Yes.
It's literally the same thing. When I saw the trailer, it's like, oh, he was lied to by the church. I was like, oh, so is James Woods. They should team up.
Yeah. Yeah, Thief is Thief is the kind of movie that's Michael Mann's first real big thing. It's James Caan. He's a safe cracker. He's just got it. His best scene, I'll just say, is the diner scene. You'll know it when you see it. It's real. It's the stuff that Pixel did not see in this current film tonight, Heavy Metal, because of the lack of the human element, the storytelling. All Michael Mann stuff that you would get from Miami Vice, Heat, and Collateral. If he doesn't do Thief and Thief's not successful, you don't have Heat, you don't have Collateral. There's a lot of similar themes to it, and I know those movies are really good. I think it's just tremendous. The scores, Tangerine Dream, who did The Keep that we've covered recently here on the Extreme Movie Show. Again, like to say we're 80s based, but we'll branch out and tackle just about anything really when it comes to movies or television.
And we are, if for those wanting we want more James Caan, check out Eraser. We did a review of that.
That is true. That is true. Eventually, I'm sure we'll do Elf.
And if you're looking for something that also features Eraser by David Lynch, Eraserhead.
No.
No.
But we can cover Rollerball someday.
Yeah, that's been on our list for a long time too. So yeah, Thief is a deliberate movie. It's very slow pace. It's not action. It's everything that John Wick is not. Besides that long and all that. And John Wick obviously is known for its action sequences and stylish choreography and everything else there too in action films.
James Caan is like for whatever reason I always remember him for Honeymoon in Vegas. like to me, that's like when people think James Caan, it's either Misery or Honeymoon in Vegas, where he's trying to steal Nick Cage's girl.
People remember Misery, but I'm telling you, James Caan's the guy that, you know, if you like him, this is his just his meaty role. That he is on fire in here and he's not screwing around, and just the way it's shot is just incredible. It's definitely not a fantasy film.
Red Line 700. Wow, he's in a lot of movies.
He's been around. Yeah. All right, guys. Hey, thanks for watching. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for letting people know that we exist. We got a couple new subs here too. I don't know if that's from our last episode of Wayward Pines, episode 2, taking off there, about 100 views already. We just actually, before this one, did episode 3. That, of course, is that Twin Peaks / Prisoner-ish kind of show about a detective, an FBI agent who ends up in a town and things aren't exactly what they seem. It's pretty good. We just dropped that. So Tuesday night, John Wick 4 RDV, correct?
Yep. And share out this channel. Let people know we exist. The more people that show up here, the faster we get to like 1,000 subs. Let's be able to start doing some more stuff on this channel, and you might see more active, you know?
You know,
I agree totally. Go ahead.
I love that we figured out that Patrick McGowan and David Lynch having a baby equals M. Night Shyamalan.
And Pixel, close us out. Let them know what production this is.
This is not a Dan Curtis production, not an M. Night Shyamalan production, and also not a David Lynch production.
And
it's an Xtreme production.
It's not a Quinn Martin production, yeah.
Who the hell production is it?
It's a Rob Media production, gentlemen. Let's be honest, okay?
Yeah,
John Wick 4, it's, yeah. That's what we're going to talk about Tuesday, so we're going to dive into it. RDV, we're trading bullets. We'll kill each other 300 times. How's that sound, RDV?
I'm going to climb to the top of the stairs.
The sacred cure.
And say, Adrian, I did it.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a good night. As always, stay extreme.
Good night.